Rachel sighed, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as she sipped her wine. The restaurant's dim lighting cast a warm glow over our table, reflecting off the half-empty glass in her perfectly manicured hand. I watched her, waiting, knowing that she was working up to something. Finally, she set her phone down with an exaggerated sigh and looked at me. "You're too predictable, James." I raised an eyebrow, pausing mid-cut through my steak. "Am I?" She smirked, swirling her wine before taking another slow sip. "Come on, don't act like you don't know what I mean." She gestured around us. "We always go to the same kind of restaurants. You always order steak, I always get wine. You always dress the same, clean-cut, polished button-up shirts, dark slacks, even the way you react to things. It's like I can predict your next move before you even make it." I set my fork down, leaning back slightly in my chair. I didn't realize consistency was such a crime. Rachel shrugged, tilting her head, her eyes gleaming with something between amusement and exasperation. "It's not a crime, James. It's just, I don't know, sometimes I wish there was more excitement, more spontaneity, something unexpected." I didn't respond right away. I studied her, the way she sat just a little too comfortably in her own self-importance, the way she spoke as if she were entitled to something more than she already had. The truth was, I had known for a while that Rachel had grown restless. She wanted a thrill, a shake-up, something that made her feel alive in ways I apparently no longer did. But what she didn't realize, what she never expected, was that I had been paying attention, that I had been thinking, planning, and tonight she had just given me the perfect opportunity to execute it. I smiled at her, a slow, measured smile. "I see. You want excitement, Rachel?" She nodded, pleased that I seemed to understand. "Yeah, I mean, don't you ever feel like we're just stuck?" I reached for my glass, taking a sip of water before answering. "I guess I can see your point." Rachel beamed, clearly satisfied that she had gotten through to me. "Exactly. You understand, don't you?" "Oh, I do," I said. "And you know what? You're right. Predictability can be suffocating." Her eyes lit up, her smile widening. "I knew you'd get it. Maybe we should—" "Don't worry," I interrupted, setting my glass down with a quiet clink. "I'll make sure you get all the excitement you're asking for." Rachel tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" I simply smiled again. The next morning, she woke up to an empty house. The bed beside her was cold, the closet half empty. She reached for her phone. No service. She ran to her purse. Credit cards declined. Her breath quickened as she walked through the eerily silent house, only to stop dead in her tracks when she saw what was sitting on the kitchen counter. A single sheet of paper, divorce papers, and right beside them, a note. Hope this was exciting enough. Rachel's breath hitched as she stared at the note, the words sinking in with a weight that pressed against her chest. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, as if touching the paper would somehow change what was happening. But no, the words remained the same, clear and damning in their simplicity. Hope this was exciting enough. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the note, crumpling it slightly as panic surged through her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. This had to be a joke, a cruel, elaborate prank. James wasn't the type to do something like this. He was stable, predictable, dependable. That was the entire problem, wasn't it? That's what she had said. That's what she had complained about. But now, staring at the cold, empty house, she realized just how much she had taken that stability for granted. She spun around, her eyes darting to the kitchen table, the chairs pushed in perfectly. No sign of a rushed departure. The countertops were spotless, the dishes washed and put away. It was as if he had never been there, as if he had erased himself from her life overnight. Her heart pounded as she ran upstairs, nearly tripping over herself in her haste. The bedroom door swung open with a force that made it slam against the wall, but there was no one there to react to the noise. The bed was made on his side, the nightstand empty where his book and watch used to be. The closet door was slightly ajar, and when she yanked it open, her stomach twisted at the sight. His suits, gone. His shoes, his ties, the neat row of shirts that had always been there, vanished. Only her things remained, hanging neatly, untouched. Rachel stumbled back, gripping the doorframe as the weight of realization settled over her like a suffocating blanket. It was gone, and he hadn't just left. He had planned this. Her hands fumbled for her phone, unlocking it with shaky fingers. She tapped James's contact, pressing the call button, her heart pounding in her ears as it rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe. She tried again and again, each call going unanswered until her desperation boiled over into frustration. She moved to the dresser, yanking open drawers. Empty. The bathroom, his cologne, his razor, even his toothbrush, gone. She rushed to her purse, digging for her wallet, pulling out her credit card with the hope that maybe, just maybe, this was all some horrible misunderstanding. Decline. She grabbed another. Decline. A cold sweat broke out across her skin as she ran back to the note, gripping it tightly as if she could somehow squeeze answers from the paper. No, this wasn't happening. James didn't just leave. James didn't just disappear. He wouldn't do this to her, would he? Rachel's mind reeled as she tried to retrace the last few weeks, the last few months. Had there been signs? Had she been so caught up in her own dissatisfaction that she had missed the warnings? She had assumed she held the power in their relationship, that James would always be there, steady and constant, no matter how much she pushed, no matter how much she sought something more. Now she was realizing how dangerously wrong she had been. She needed answers. Still gripping her phone, she tried calling a different number. Her best friend, Lisa. Pick up, Rachel muttered under her breath, pacing back and forth in the kitchen. Finally, a click. Hey, Rach, what's up? Lisa's voice was casual, unconcerned. Rachel exhaled in relief. Lisa, I need you to come over now. There was a pause on the other end. Now's not really a great time. Please. Her voice cracked, and she hated how weak she sounded. James, he's gone. Everything's gone. He left me. Silence. Then Lisa sighed. Rachel, I think you should sit down. Rachel's stomach twisted. Why? Because, Lisa said slowly, this isn't just some random thing James decided to do. He's been planning this for weeks, maybe even months. Rachel's grip tightened on her phone. What are you talking about? Lisa hesitated. Rich, James told me. A while ago, he told me he was done. The words hit her like a slap. And you didn't think to tell me? Would you have listened? Lisa's voice was sharp now and Rachel flinched. You've been acting like James was some boring accessory to your life, like he wasn't enough for you. You kept saying you wanted something more, something different. You think he didn't hear that? You think he didn't feel it? Rachel sank into a chair, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. I told you to be careful, Lisa continued. I told you James wasn't the type to beg. But you didn't listen. Rachel's head spun, her thoughts colliding in a chaotic mess. She had never imagined James leaving, not really. She had assumed he would always be there, steady and predictable, waiting for her to figure out what she wanted. But he hadn't waited, and now she was alone, completely terrifyingly alone. Rachel sat in stunned silence, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers ached. Lisa's words rang in her ears, each one landing like a well-aimed punch to the gut. James had been planning this for weeks. That single realization made her stomach churn. She had been so confident, so secure in the belief that she held all the control, that James was just there, reliable, unchanging, always waiting for her whims to dictate their lives. She had never once considered that he might walk away first. You still there? Lisa's voice cut through the silence, sharp with impatience. Rachel forced herself to swallow. Lisa, I don't understand. Why would he just leave? Why wouldn't he tell me? Lisa scoffed. Tell you? And what, Rachel, give you time to argue, to twist things, to make him feel guilty for wanting to be respected? Come on, don't act surprised. James was done. The only thing he had left to say was, in that note. Rachel's fingers curled into a fist around the paper, her nails digging into it. But it's not like I was gonna leave him, she said weakly. Maybe not physically, Lisa shot back, but emotionally, spiritually, you already had one foot out the door, Rach, and James saw it. He felt it. Rachel pressed her palm against her forehead, her thoughts racing. Had she really been that obvious? She had complained, sure. She had vented to Lisa, to her other friends, to herself, about how dull James was, about how he lacked spontaneity, about how predictable he had become. But that didn't mean she wanted him gone. She just wanted more. But what did more even mean? Certainly not this. She pushed back from the kitchen table abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She had to fix this. Where is he? She demanded. Lisa, you said he told you weeks ago. Do you know where he went? Lisa let out a slow, exasperated sigh. Rachel, no. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. James didn't just go on a trip. He left. He walked away from you and he meant it. Rachel shook her head even though Lisa couldn't see her. No. This isn't over. He can't just disappear. We've been together for 10 years, married for 7. You don't just erase a marriage overnight. That's funny, Lisa said, her tone laced with sarcasm. Because that's exactly what you've been doing for months, Rach. Piece by piece, except when you did it, you called it searching for excitement. When James did it, you called it erasing a marriage. Rachel's chest tightened. I didn't mean it like that, she whispered. Then what did you mean? Rachel couldn't answer. Her mind was spiraling. Where would James go? He had no family in town. His closest friends were mutual acquaintances. He wasn't the type to crash at someone's place without telling her. And yet, she realized with a sickening jolt, he could have been planning this so thoroughly that he had options she didn't even know about. She rushed to the bedroom, throwing open drawers, searching for any scrap of evidence, a note, an itinerary, anything. But James was methodical. Every trace of him had been wiped clean. She ran back downstairs, opening the coat closet. His favorite leather jacket gone. The umbrella he always kept by the door missing. Her pulse pounded as she grabbed her phone again. If Lisa wouldn't help her, maybe someone else would. She scrolled frantically through her contacts, stopping on Mark's name. Mark had been James's best friend for years. If anyone knew where he was, it would be him. She had dialed. It rang and rang. And then, hey, this is Mark. Leave a message. Rachel groaned in frustration and pressed redial. This time, Mark picked up on the third ring. Rachel! His voice was cautious. Mark, she breathed out, trying to steady herself. Please tell me you know where James is. A long silence. Then, Rachel, I think you need to let this go. Her heart skipped a beat. What? No, I just need to talk to him. I need to explain. Explain what? Mark cut her off. His tone wasn't angry, but it was firm. That you didn't really mean what you said? That you didn't realize what you had? Come on, Rachel. James knew. That's why he left. But I'm not getting in the middle of this, Mark said. James asked me not to. Rachel felt the weight of those words settle on her chest. So you do know where he is? Mark sighed. Rachel, he's moving on. Maybe you should too. The call ended. Rachel stood frozen, staring at the screen, her hands trembling. This couldn't be happening. James wasn't answering. His best friend was shutting her out. Everything she had relied on, everything she had assumed was hers, her safety net, her stability, was gone. She tried calling James again, straight to voicemail. She tried texting. James, please, just talk to me. No response. She stared at the three dots that appeared for a moment. Then they disappeared. Her breath caught in her throat. He had started typing, then changed his mind. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, her nails digging into her palm. For the first time in her life, she was experiencing real unpredictability, and she hated it. James had given her exactly what she asked for, and it terrified her. Rachel sat frozen, staring at her phone screen, willing James to respond. The three dots had appeared, then vanished, leaving her in a state of unbearable limbo. He saw her message, he almost replied, but he didn't. The realization sent a fresh wave of panic crashing over her. James wasn't just ignoring her, he was deliberately choosing not to engage. That wasn't like him. James was always level-headed, always the one to listen, to discuss, to work through things. And yet here she was, left in silence. Her stomach twisted as she tried calling him again. Voicemail. Again, the lump in her throat grew tighter. She wasn't used to this feeling. She had always been the one in control, the one who dictated how things played out. If she wanted space, James gave it to her. If she wanted a serious conversation, he was there ready to listen. If she needed reassurance, he provided it without hesitation. But now she was the one chasing. Now she was the one left scrambling, desperate for answers that no one seemed willing to give her. She paced the length of the kitchen, trying to make sense of it all. How had this happened so fast? Had she really been that blind? Had she really thought James would just sit there, waiting for her to make up her mind? Lisa's words replayed in her head. Jane was done. Would you have even listened? You had one foot out the door. Rachel clenched her jaw. That wasn't true, was it? She had never planned on leaving. She had just been questioning things, wondering if there was more. That wasn't the same as walking away, was it? Her stomach churned as she thought back to all the little moments she had brushed off, never realizing they were adding up to something bigger. The nights James had been quieter than usual. The way he had stopped initiating conversations about their future. The fact that he no longer seemed interested in winning her back when she played her little games of pushing and pulling. God, had she really pushed him too far? The thought made her chest tighten. No, there had to be a way to fix this. She grabbed her keys and purse, her movements frantic. If James wouldn't answer her calls, she would find him herself. She knew his habits, his favorite places. She would check his office, the gym, the cafe where he always grabbed his morning coffee. She had to at least try. Rachel hurried out the door, slamming it behind her. The first stop was James's office. She pulled into the parking lot, her heart hammering in her chest as she rushed inside. The receptionist looked up, her expression shifting the moment she recognized Rachel. "Mrs. Carter," the woman said, her tone hesitant. Rachel forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. "Hi, is James in?" The receptionist hesitated. I'm not sure if he's taking visitors right now." Rachel's stomach dropped. "So he is here?" The woman looked uncomfortable. "He left instructions not to be disturbed." Rachel clenched her fists. "Can you just tell him it's me, please? I need to talk to him." The receptionist hesitated again, then nodded. "One moment." Rachel watched as she made a call, speaking in hushed tones. Then, after a pause, she set the phone down and looked at Rachel with sympathy in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "He said he's not available." Rachel's breath hitched. "Not available?" Her hands curled into fists. "This wasn't James. This wasn't how he handled things." She turned sharply and walked out before the receptionist could say anything else. Fine, if he wouldn't see her here, she would try somewhere else. The gym was next. James had always been a creature of habit, and morning workouts were part of his routine. If he wasn't at work, he might be there. Rachel parked hastily and ran inside, scanning the room for him. Nothing. Her frustration deepened as she approached the front desk. "Excuse me," she said quickly. "James Carter, has he been here today?" The employee checked the system. "No check-ins today." Rachel exhaled sharply. Where was he? She racked her brain, trying to think of where else he could have gone. Then it hit her. The coffee shop. It was small, tucked into a quiet street, the kind of place James loved because it wasn't crowded. He went there almost every morning. Her tires screeched as she pulled out of the parking lot, speeding toward the cafe. The moment she walked in, she knew. There he was, sitting near the window, his laptop open in front of him, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. But he wasn't alone. Rachel's stomach plummeted. Across from him sat a woman. She was laughing at something James had just said, her fingers lightly resting on her coffee cup. She was pretty. Long dark hair, confident posture. The kind of woman who looked like she knew exactly what she wanted. Rachel felt her chest tighten. James wasn't just gone, he was moving on. Something inside her cracked. She had assumed she would have time, that he would come back, that she would be the one to decide what happened next. But looking at him now, at the way he leaned in slightly, fully engaged in the conversation, she knew the truth. James had made his choice, and it wasn't her. Rachel swallowed the lump in her throat, her fingers trembling as she took a step back. For the first time, she felt the full weight of what she had lost. Not just James, not just their marriage, but every chance she had to fix it. And worst of all, she had no one to blame but herself. Rachel stood frozen in place, her pulse thudding loudly in her ears as she watched James from across the cafe. He looked so at ease, so free, as if the weight of their marriage had already lifted off his shoulders. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't waiting for her call. He wasn't waiting for her. Her throat tightened, and for a brief moment she wanted to march over there, demand an explanation, make him see her. But what would she even say? That she was sorry, that she had made a mistake, that she hadn't meant for him to actually leave? Would any of it even matter? James wasn't a man who played games. He had always been clear, always fair, and when he was done, he was done. She had assumed he would always be there, steady and patient, no matter how much she pushed him away. But now, she realized with a sickening certainty, he had already let her go. Rachel took a shaky breath and forced herself to turn away. She couldn't bear to watch him smile at another woman, to see him laughing so effortlessly when she was unraveling. She pushed open the cafe door, stepping back into the cold morning air. The wind bit at her skin, but she barely felt it. Everything inside her felt numb. As she walked to her car, her mind raced, trying to process the weight of her reality. For years, James had been her anchor, the man who made sure the bills were paid, the home was steady, and her world remained secure. She had hated how predictable he was, how safe he made her feel. She had wanted excitement, something unpredictable, and now, standing in an empty parking lot, her heart hollow and aching, she realized something far worse than boredom. Loneliness. She had thought excitement meant freedom, that she needed more than the life she had built with James. But excitement was fleeting, and stability? She had mistaken it for something suffocating, when in reality, it had been the only thing truly holding her life together. Rachel gripped the steering wheel when she got into her car, staring blankly ahead. This was her doing. Every word, every careless sigh, every time she dismissed James's presence as ordinary, she had pushed him toward this moment. And now, when she finally saw the truth, it was too late to take it back. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Hope surged through her chest as she snatched it up, her fingers trembling as she unlocked the screen. It was a message. For a second, she thought, James, but no, it was Lisa. You have to let this go, Rach. James is gone, and he's not coming back. Rachel exhaled sharply, the words cutting deeper than she expected. She knew Lisa was right. James wasn't playing hard to get. He wasn't testing her. He wasn't trying to make her realize her mistake. He had simply moved on. Tears blurred her vision as she typed out a reply. She wanted to argue, to say that she could fix this, that there had to be a way to make things right. But even as she formed the words, she knew the truth. There was no fixing this. Rachel deleted the message before sending it. For the first time in years, she had no control over the situation, no power to manipulate things in her favor. James had been the predictable one, but now he was the one who had changed the script. Rachel sat in her car for what felt like hours, staring at her phone, waiting for a message that would never come. And for the first time in her life, she truly understood what regret felt like.